Why did none of them notice the silence in her eyes? Why did no one wonder why Lieutenant Commander Alexandra Morgan kept glancing over her shoulder on that narrow ridge, as if some instinct inside her whispered a warning louder than the mountain wind? She walked with her team, at least, the team she believed she could trust, but something about the air felt wrong, heavier, as if the mountain itself was holding its breath. She had been in enough operations to recognize the shift, the subtle change in body language, the too-controlled breathing, the false casualness of men preparing to do something irreversible. They walked ahead or beside her in a loose formation that made no tactical sense, not for a simple training exercise, not for a routine climb, not for the Sierra Nevada terrain she'd maneuvered through since her earliest SEAL years. But there was something she hadn't told them, not yet. The morning had begun normally, at least on paper. Cold air, crisp light, ropes and carabiners clinking like steel wind chimes as everyone geared up. The Blackhawk defense contractors pretended this was just another cross-training mission, but she'd been watching them from the moment they stepped onto the mountain, watching Frost with those dead, calculating eyes, watching Cooper with his satellite phone calls he conveniently stepped away for, watching the extra crates that weren't on the manifest, watching them watch her. It wasn't paranoia. It was experience. And it was experience that warned her, just seconds before it happened. 1 minute she was scanning the ridge for their next checkpoint. The next, a pair of hands shoved hard between her shoulder blades. No hesitation, no warning, no mistake. Not a stumble. Not an accident. A kill move. The world tilted, the horizon flipping upside down as gravity tore her off the rocky ledge. Cold air rushed past her face, carrying pine scent, dust, something metallic. Time slowed into fragments, the crunch of boots above her as someone stepped back, the scrape of gravel rolling toward the cliff's edge, the muffled sound of someone laughing before they cut it off too late. And as the sky spun, she didn't scream. She didn't beg. She didn't even curse. Her mind became still, razor-sharp, returning to its most primitive form of calculation. Find a handhold. Break the fall. Stay alive. Her fingers scraped along unforgiving granite, torn skin, splintering pain, and then her right hand slammed against a protruding rock. The impact sent white fire ripping down her arm, through her ribs into her lungs. Something cracked. Something tore. Her body jerked violently from the momentum, her shoulder nearly dislocated. But she held on. The force rattled her entire frame, and for 3 seconds she hung suspended over a black void, legs dangling, boots scraping against useless air. Blood streamed down her face from where her temple struck the rock during the fall. Her left eye blurred, her lungs seized, her ribs screamed. One slip, and she would drop another 150 feet into untouched darkness. Above her, boots shuffled. No panic. No guilt. No one rushing to help. Well, damn, that was cleaner than I thought. Frost's voice drifted down, casual, satisfied. She ain't climbing back up that, Cooper muttered. Not without a rope. There was no scramble for rescue gear, no call for help, just silence and then footsteps walking away. They were certain she was dead. Good. Let them believe that. She pressed her cheek against the cold stone, gathering her breath, each inhale sharp enough to taste blood. Her right hand trembled, the torn skin burning against the jagged outcropping. Her thigh throbbed from a wound she couldn't yet fully feel. Her ribs definitely cracked, maybe worse. She couldn't stay here. She wouldn't stay here. She cast her gaze upward through her one unobscured eye and forced herself to study the rock face, not as a victim but as a strategist. The outcropping she clung to wasn't stable. Tiny flakes of stone cracked off with every shift of her fingers. Below her, the drop disappeared into darkness. Above her, the ridge seemed impossibly high. She clenched her jaw. They picked the wrong SEAL to kill. For a moment her mind drifted, unexpected, unbidden, back to 3 days earlier when this mission still looked like a training operation, when she took the briefing packet from headquarters at Norfolk, when the colonel she trusted, Bill Hayes, warned her with a voice bordering on something she'd never heard from him before: fear. "Morgan, if anything feels off, you bail. That's an order." She'd brushed him off. She'd never walked away from a mission in her life. She wasn't about to start now. She had told herself Hayes was simply being overcautious with one of his protégés, one of the few in the program who could keep up with his legendary standards. But then he mentioned it. The device. The one he'd hidden in her climbing gear, the old tech SATCOM tracker using frequencies so outdated no one scanned for them anymore. Legal? Probably not. Life-saving? Potentially. She thought it was unnecessary. She wasn't thinking that anymore. Her hand reached down to her belt with slow, careful precision. The small SATCOM device was still there, miraculously intact. She pressed the activation sequence twice, short, long, and tucked it back into place. Whether Hayes was close enough, whether he would even receive the signal, she didn't know. But hope was something she couldn't afford to throw away. Her body screamed as she adjusted her grip. Pain radiated from her ribs with every breath she managed to steal. Her shoulder pulsed with a sickening heat. Her legs trembled as she searched for a foothold in the tiny fractures of stone beneath her. She began to climb. Not fast. Not clean. But with purpose. She remembered a moment from 15 years earlier, Day 9 of Bud S., the cliff drill in Coronado. The instructor who cut her safety rope mid-climb and shouted at her from below. "What are you, Morgan, equipment or operator?" She hadn't answered then. She just climbed until her fingers bled. Now, hanging on a vertical death sentence, she repeated his words to herself. Equipment fails. Plans fail. Bodies fail. Will doesn't. Her hand latched onto the next hold, shaky, bloody, barely strong enough. The wind clawed at her hair. Cold seeped through her uniform. She could feel her strength draining like water through cracked palms. But she climbed. 10 feet. 15. 20. Her vision blurred. Her muscles trembled uncontrollably. Her ribs felt like they might splinter with every exhale. But then, just when she thought her arm would give, a faint shape caught her eye. A bolt. Old, rusted, half hidden under lichen. A military anchor bolt from decades ago, from the training days of soldiers who'd climbed these mountains long before she ever wore a uniform. Her lips parted, breath trembling. The mountain remembered. She used it. Then another. And another. A ghost route, dangerous, forgotten, unstable, but a route. Her route. Upward. The sun dipped lower, bleeding orange across the sky. She climbed until her breath became thin, until her hands became raw, until her arms felt like they no longer belonged to her. And then, her fingers touched dirt. The ridge. She pulled herself over the edge and collapsed onto solid ground, chest heaving, vision swimming, body quaking from exhaustion and blood loss. For a long moment she didn't move. She couldn't. She simply stared up at the sky, blue giving way to gold, and let the cold air fill her bruised lungs. Then she rolled to her hands and knees. Then to her feet. Because above her, somewhere in the distance, she heard voices. Blackhawk voices. They were still here. And they thought she was dead. She wiped blood from her eyes with the back of her hand, steadied her breathing, then whispered into the darkening air, more vow than words. "You tried to kill a SEAL." Her hand tightened around her remaining knife. "What you did was unleash one." What made them so sure she wouldn't get back up? What convinced them that gravity or pain or silence would be enough to erase her? Alexandra wondered that as she steadied her breathing, her fingers trembling against the hilt of her knife. The ridge felt colder now, the wind sharper, as if the mountain itself had shifted from passive witness to quiet ally. She stood slowly. Every muscle protested, her ribs pulsed with each inhale, a dull warning of deeper damage. Blood trickled down her cheek. Her fingertips were raw, the skin torn open in patterns only climbers understood. Alive but barely. Ahead the voices grew clearer. Laughter, boots scraping over stone, someone cursing about a malfunctioning drone, someone else bragging about how clean the push looked, how she went right over like a sack of gear. Their confidence wasn't arrogance. It was certainty. They truly believed the mountain had swallowed her. Good. She needed their certainty. She followed the trail of their noise, moving low, careful, slow, not because she feared them, but because her body demanded it. Every step sent fire up her side. Every breath was a negotiation. But she moved anyway, guided by instinct, memory, training, and something older, survival tempered by betrayal. She couldn't forget the sound of their footsteps walking away, the casualness, the lack of hesitation. Men didn't do that on their own. Someone had planned this. Someone had ordered it. But who? Her mind drifted back to the moment she received the assignment. The colonel's voice had been too quiet, too carefully neutral. The mission file too thin. The contractor roster too incomplete. And the fact she was the only active-duty SEAL integrated into this joint training wasn't just unusual. It was a red flag painted bright enough to blind anyone who didn't want to see it. She should have listened to Hayes. She should have listened to herself. But guilt could wait. Now was about survival and answers. She slowed as she approached a natural choke point in the terrain, two massive boulders forming a narrow pass. The voices were right beyond it. She could hear them clearly. So what now? We radio it in. No, not yet, Frost said. We need to confirm the body's unrecoverable. You shoved her off a cliff, man. That's pretty unrecoverable. Yeah, SEALs have survived worse. Something in his tone made the others quiet down. She was getting too close, Cooper muttered, kicking at something. Asked too many questions. She saw the crate yesterday, Frost added. Don't act like you didn't notice. Alexandra froze. The crate. The one she asked about twice. The one they lied about twice. And if she reported it, Cooper asked, if Hayes got involved, he'd rip this whole op apart. Another voice chimed in, one she hadn't heard clearly earlier, lower and rougher, probably Griggs. So that's why Command okayed this. A pause. A too long pause. Command doesn't need to know, Frost replied. Command didn't know. Her pulse shifted, not in speed but in depth, like something ancient within her recentered, sharpened, began to focus through the pain and betrayal. Someone high up had not sent these men to kill her. Someone lower down had. Someone inside the contractor group. Someone using the mission as a cover. Her hand tightened around the knife. She wasn't just fighting for survival. She was fighting to uncover whatever they were hiding. She edged closer to the rock wall, positioning herself where the wind carried their voices but concealed her steps. The sun had dipped lower, shadows lengthening across the pass. If she was going to move, it had to be now. She peered through a narrow crack between the stones. 4 men, weapons holstered but within reach. 1 drone case open. 1 crate, the crate sitting off to the side under a camo cover. Her breath stuck for a moment. That wasn't standard issue. That wasn't training equipment. That was something else. Something powerful enough they were willing to kill for. She steadied herself. She wasn't attacking. She wasn't rushing. She needed to think. She needed to approach this like an operator, not a wounded survivor. But then, a sound she had prayed she wouldn't hear. The soft chime of an encrypted SATCOM receiver. Hers. Someone had hacked it. Her heart dropped, then surged with cold anger. Frost pulled out a small device from his pocket, squinting at it. She triggered her beacon. "Impossible," Cooper said. "She's dead." Frost shook the device. "Then why am I getting a signal bouncing around the ridge?" A long silence. Then Griggs spoke. "Think she's still alive?" Frost didn't respond. He didn't have to. Because Alexandra moved. Not with strength. Not with speed. But with intent. Her footsteps were silent as she circled around the choke point, heading for higher ground. She didn't need to confront them. Not now. She needed elevation. She needed cover. She needed time to understand what she was up against. She found a ridge 10 feet above their position, using a fallen log and fractured rocks as camouflage. She crouched low, whispering breaths through cracked ribs, listening. "It's probably just interference," Cooper insisted. Frost didn't look convinced. "Griggs, Patel, sweep east. Cooper, west. I'll check the ridge." The ridge. The same ridge she was climbing toward. She slid backward, careful not to dislodge loose gravel. The sky darkened further. Her vision blurred again. Her body felt like it was unraveling in slow motion. No time. No margin. She moved deeper into the tree line, using the mountain's natural contours, every instinct from years of night operations guiding her steps. She counted Frost's footsteps, too heavy, too confident. He wasn't tracking. Not yet. He was searching. She could use that. She looped around, creating distance. The SATCOM beacon in her pocket thrummed again, once, then twice. The old tech, the unstable frequency. Hayes might hear it, or it might be bouncing off rock faces, creating ghost signals. Good, confusion could buy her time. She reached a small ledge overlooking a valley. The moon was rising, bleeding silver across the landscape. The wind chilled her sweat-soaked skin. Her legs nearly gave out. She leaned against the rock, shutting her eyes for a moment longer than she meant to. A memory sharpened unexpectedly, a soft one from years earlier. Her father teaching her how to climb the old quarry wall behind their house. His voice calm, steady. "You don't climb mountains with muscles, Lexi. You climb them with mind. Muscles just follow." She breathed slowly. Mind first. Pain later. Answers soon. She opened her eyes again. Frost's flashlight beam sliced through the trees far below, moving too quickly. He wasn't tracking her. He was hunting the signal. She pulled out the SATCOM unit and stared at it. A small, outdated thing, buzzing faintly with static. If she kept it with her, she'd be found. If she turned it off, Hayes would never find her. So she did the only thing that made sense. She set it down on a flat stone, pressed a small rock onto the activation button to keep it sending its faint beacon, and walked away, slow, quiet, controlled. The beam moved toward it. She moved in the opposite direction. Her breath became a thin whisper. Her ribs trembled. Her legs shook. But she didn't stop until the flashlight beam disappeared behind a ridge. Safe for now. She leaned against a pine tree, letting the cool bark steady her. But then she froze. Another sound. Boots. Not Frost's. Lighter. Faster. Coming straight toward her. Not wandering. Not searching. Tracking. Someone was following her trail. Not because of the SATCOM. Because of something else. Something she didn't realize she had left behind. She lowered herself slowly, knife ready, heart pounding a warning she didn't want to hear, not from fear, but from the cold understanding that things were worse than she thought. Someone among those men wasn't just part of the plan. Someone was built for the hunt. And they were getting closer. Why did the footsteps behind her feel different? Why did they carry a rhythm she recognized? Not sloppy contractor patterns, not Frost's arrogant stride, not Cooper's heavy, careless stomp, but the controlled cadence of someone who understood silence as a weapon. Alexandra felt it before she heard it, a vibration in the soil, a shift in the air. Someone trained, someone patient, someone like her. Her breath slowed, her heartbeat narrowed into a focused, steady pulse. She crouched behind a fallen tree, every nerve on alert despite her battered body. The mountain wind cooled her sweat-soaked skin, carrying pine, dust, and the faint echo of distant movement. The footsteps paused. She didn't move. A twig cracked, deliberate, not accidental. A signal, someone announcing their presence without revealing their intent. A tactic she'd used before when tracking friendlies in uncertain terrain. But she wasn't surrounded by friendlies. She exhaled quietly, lowering her center of gravity, knife angled upward. She counted the seconds. 1, 2, 3, footsteps again, closer this time but still controlled. Then a voice. Not loud, not rushed, almost calm. "Lieutenant Morgan, you're tougher than they thought." Alexandra's blood went cold. That voice didn't belong to Frost or Cooper or any contractor she'd been briefed on. It was younger, smoother, threaded with something unsettling, confidence based on knowledge he shouldn't have. She didn't answer. She didn't reveal her position. But the figure stepped into view anyway. Tall, lean, dark tactical clothing without insignia, a rifle slung comfortably across his chest but not in his hands. Hands free, because he wanted to show he didn't need a weapon. His face was partly shadowed by the rising moon, but she could make out sharp features, steady eyes, and a faint scar across his jaw. "You don't know me," he said quietly, "but I know you." Her grip tightened on the knife. He studied the ground, the broken branches, the dirt displaced by her boots. He tracked her without effort, following her trail with unsettling precision. Never thought I'd see a seal survive a fall like that. He stepped closer, scanning the cliff ridge behind them with mild admiration. "You climbed that with a broken rib." She remained silent. A small, almost respectful smile tugged at his mouth. "I'm impressed." She shifted her stance, preparing to move. "Who are you?" He didn't answer immediately. He moved closer to the fallen tree, stopping several feet away, close enough to speak, far enough to dodge if she attacked. "Name Rook." The name meant nothing, but the tone meant everything. He wasn't here to help. He wasn't here to negotiate. He was here to complete whatever mission Frost had botched. Rook gestured casually behind him. "Your little beacon trick worked on Frost. He's busy chasing ghosts." His eyes dropped to the ground and followed her trail with unerring accuracy. "But I don't chase ghosts." He pointed to her blood on a cluster of pine needles. "I chase this." A chill traced her spine. So that was the thing she'd left behind. Her injury. Her lifeline. Her betrayal. "Why," she whispered, more to herself than to him, "why go this far?" Rook studied her for a moment, as if debating how much to reveal. Then he shrugged with a quiet honesty that felt more dangerous than any lie. "Orders." "Whose?" He didn't answer. He didn't need to. But the silence that followed cut deeper than the fall. She exhaled shakily, shifting her weight to her good leg. "I'm not dying on this mountain." "You're not." His voice softened in a way that made her muscles tighten, at least not quickly. Her heart steadied, not fear, clarity. He moved first. Not toward her, not away. Sideways. Testing her. She adjusted. He smiled faintly. They understood each other now. She realized something then, something she wasn't expecting to feel. Not panic. Recognition. Rook wasn't just trained. He was familiar. A posture she'd seen in specialized units. A foot placement taught only to certain operators. A breathing pattern from deep tactical training. Not a contractor. Not a mercenary, not a rogue agent, but something else. She narrowed her eyes. You're military. He didn't deny it. Classified, he replied simply. The word dropped between them like a blade. She scanned him again, movement, stance, discipline. And then it hit her, the scar near his jaw, the way he favored his left side slightly, the quiet breathing methods used to conserve energy on long hunts. She knew exactly what he was. Tier 1, she whispered. His faint smile confirmed it. She felt the air leave her lungs, shock, disbelief, anger all tangled into one breath. Contractors didn't have Tier 1 operators hidden inside their units. They didn't have access to that level of training. Unless someone very high up wanted her dead. Someone with power, connections, access. Rook approached another step, slow, deliberate. You weren't supposed to be on this mission, Lieutenant Morgan. They swapped rosters last minute. Her jaw tightened. Why? He tilted his head slightly, studying her with something like regret. Because you're the only one who would have recognized what they're carrying in that crate. The crate. Her heart hammered. She had suspected, she had guessed. But hearing it spoken. What is it? She asked. He didn't answer. Instead, he lifted his chin. You already know. She did. She didn't want to. She felt the truth settling heavily in her chest, like a weight she'd been avoiding since the briefing. And it explained everything. The secrecy. The roster swap. The urgency. The attempt to silence her. Because if the crate carried what she thought it did, the risk wasn't just to her. It was to U.S. personnel, to allies, to civilians, to global stability. Rook took another step. That's why I have to finish this. She tightened her grip on the knife, over my dead body. That's the idea. He lunged. The attack was fast, far faster than she'd expected, but instinct saved her. She rolled to the side, pain tearing up her ribs like a burning chain. His hand sliced past her shoulder, grabbing only air. He pivoted cleanly, his movements efficient and lethal. She rose to her knees, body screaming, knife ready. You're injured, he said evenly. I noticed. You're tired. Still noticed. He circled her like a wolf measuring a wounded rival. You can't fight me like this. She swallowed, steady but shaking. I don't need to fight you. His brow lifted. I just need to outthink you. She lunged not at him, but at the slope behind him, pushing off her good leg with a burst of raw willpower. Her momentum carried her down the incline, sliding through loose gravel and roots, using gravity, again, to escape death. Rook cursed softly and followed, but she had already created distance. Not safety, but possibility. Tree branches whipped her arms, stones tore her palms, pain flared everywhere, but she kept moving, every breath of victory, every step forward a refusal. The mountain leveled out briefly, offering a narrow stretch of flat ground. She turned sharply, diving behind a cluster of boulders. Rook reached the clearing seconds later, muzzle of his suppressed pistol scanning the terrain. Her lungs burned, her vision pulsed. She waited. Then, a voice crackled faintly in the distance. Not Frost. Not Cooper. Not a contractor. A radio she recognized. A voice she knew. Lexi, if you can hear me, ping came through. I'm en route. Colonel Hayes. Her throat tightened. Rook lifted his head at the same moment she did. Their eyes met across the clearing. You're out of time, he said softly. But Alexandra wasn't sure whose time he meant. His or hers. How much time did she have before Rook closed the distance? Alexandra pressed her back against the cold boulder, lungs burning, ribs screaming with every shallow breath. Colonel Hayes' voice still echoed in her head, distant, faint, fractured by mountains and old-tech static. He was coming, but so was Rook. And Rook was closer. She peeked around the rock. He wasn't in the clearing anymore. The patch of moonlit ground lay empty, shadows stretching long and distorted. The silence was too complete, no branches snapping, no boots scraping, no breath other than her own. Either he'd lost her trail, or he was already repositioning. She drew in a quiet, steadying breath, the kind beaten into her during Bud S., the kind she leaned on during sniper school, the kind she learned to trust when fear wanted to take the wheel. Her knife felt too light in her grip, her hand too shaky, her right arm almost numb from earlier impact. She didn't have the strength for a prolonged fight. She didn't have the weaponry for a direct confrontation. She only had her mind. And the mountain. She slipped behind the boulders, keeping low, keeping silent. Every foot placement was deliberate, as if the earth itself had become an enemy she couldn't afford to alert. She angled toward a dense cluster of fir trees, their shadows deep enough to swallow her whole. Then, a faint sound. Not footsteps. Breathing. Controlled, focused, close. Too close. She lowered herself slowly, pressing into the darkness. She could almost feel his presence above her, scanning, listening, calculating. He was a hunter, and right now she was bleeding prey. But prey had advantages too. Predictable hunter patterns. Overconfidence. Reliance on assumption. She crawled deeper into the tree line, wincing as pine needles scraped her raw palms. A branch snapped somewhere to her left, not by her doing. She froze. The sound was delicate, intentional, like someone testing the air. He was probing. Intelligence gathering. Trying to force her movement. She didn't give him one. Minutes passed like hours. Her ribs tightened with every breath. Her knee throbbed from a hit she hadn't even realized she'd taken during the fall. Sweat chilled on her neck despite the cold night air. Then she heard it. Soft, sharp, a metallic click. A safety switch. Not from a handgun. From a suppressed rifle. He'd escalated. She ducked lower, pressing her chest to the earth, tasting dirt in her mouth as she breathed shallowly through her nose. She couldn't outrun him. She couldn't outshoot him. But she could outthink him. She had to. Her gaze swept the ground. Pine cones, fallen branches, loose soil. A tangle of roots leading to a narrow gorge just beyond the tree line. The gorge was steep, rocky, and dangerous, exactly like the cliff she'd survived earlier. Lightning flickered in her mind. She had climbed death once tonight. Maybe she could make death work for her now. She grabbed a pinecone, tossed it to her left. It struck a tree trunk with a muted thud. For 1 second, nothing. Then a rifle muzzle flashed, silent but bright, lighting the trees where the cone landed. He wasn't guessing. He was already in range. She rolled behind another tree, using its trunk as a shield. Her lungs stuttered as she tried to quiet her breathing. She could tell from the angle of the muzzle flash he was 30 yards out, too far to rush, too close to slip away unnoticed. But his mistake was revealing his firing line. She mapped the angle. The moonlight. The shadows. The line of branches. The thermal logic of where someone trained would position themselves. She found him just a glint of his scope through a thin veil of leaves, barely visible, nearly perfect camouflage. Nearly. She needed to move before he recalibrated. She tightened her grip on the knife. Her fingers were slick with blood. She wiped them on her pants, steadied herself. Then she moved, silent, low, quick, not toward him but perpendicular, using every tree trunk as a brief, precious shield. His muzzle flicked. He was tracking motion, not position. Dust puffed beside her as a silent round chewed into the earth. She felt it in her bones. He wasn't trying to wound her. He was aiming to kill. She reached the edge of the gorge. Her eyes scanned it in a heartbeat. A drop of at least 20 feet, rocky, sharp, a narrow stream running below. She could break a leg or worse. But if she stayed up here, she'd die anyway. She didn't hesitate. She jumped. The fall knocked the breath out of her lungs. Her shoulder slammed into a jutting rock. She hit the ground hard, pain exploding through her ribs like a sledgehammer. A strangled sound escaped her throat, a sound she didn't have time to regret. Water splashed around her ankles. Cold mud soaked into her boots. She forced herself upright despite the dizziness threatening to collapse her. Above her, silence. Then the quiet movement of someone repositioning. He hadn't expected her to jump. Good. She staggered forward, using the darkness of the gorge as cover. The high walls muffled sound. The running water masked footsteps, but it also boxed her in. One way in. One way out. A trap. But for whom? Her breath hitched. She tried to quiet herself, but her lungs were raw. Her ribs didn't compress the way they should. She tasted copper on her tongue. She moved anyway. She followed the stream until it split into two channels, one shallow and narrow, another deeper and darker, cutting under a fallen log. She crouched near the deeper channel, dipping her hands into the icy water. It numbed her skin instantly. She splashed some across her face, washing away blood, reducing scent, reducing shine, reducing trail. Movement above. Not fast, not careless. Measured. He was coming down after her. She slipped into the deeper water, submerging herself until only her eyes remained above the surface. The cold punched into her bones, threatening to lock her muscles, but she stayed still. Boots scraped against rock. A shadow descended the gorge slope. Rook. Suppressor attached, flashlight off, vision sharp. He scanned the gorge floor, eyes sweeping left to right, studying the mud, the stream, the rocks, the places where water distorted tracks. He crouched. He touched the mud. He lifted his fingertips. No prints. Cold water rushing. No scent. He exhaled slowly, almost impressed. Then he stepped toward the water. Toward her. Her pulse hammered in her ears. Her body trembled from cold and pain. She held her breath. He knelt inches from where she hid beneath the surface. His shadow covered the water. His boot nearly dipped in. He looked up the gorge, then down it. Then, he whispered. Not to her. To himself. She's learning. Her heart clenched. And then, he stepped away, climbing the opposite side of the gorge, vanishing into the trees with silent efficiency. She stayed in the freezing water until the tremors overtook her limbs, until her breath turned frantic, until her teeth chattered uncontrollably. Then she dragged herself out, crawling onto the mud. Her lips were blue, her fingers numb. But she was alive. Barely. She curled against a rock, pulling her knees in, trying to restore warmth. The mountain wind sliced through her soaked clothes. Her body shook violently. But as she shivered, she realized something with startling clarity. Rook could have found her. He should have found her. But he didn't. Not because she outsmarted him. Because he allowed her to. Because he wanted the hunt to continue. Because he wasn't following orders. He was enjoying this. Her breath hitching, she lifted her head, staring into the darkness where he disappeared. She whispered one truth into the night. This isn't about killing me. Her voice trembled. It's about breaking me. Above, the wind howled. Far away, Frost and the others continued their mission. Closer, Rook tracked her next move. But somewhere beyond the mountain, somewhere cutting through sky and distance, Colonel Hayes was coming. And he wouldn't be alone. How long could she keep moving like this? Alexandra pressed her hand against the rock wall to steady herself, her soaked clothes clinging to her skin, her body trembling from cold, pain, and exhaustion. Every breath felt like a blade dragged through her ribs. Her fingernails were blue, her lips tingled, her mind wavered in and out of sharpness. She needed warmth. She needed cover. She needed time. But the mountain gave none of those freely. She staggered forward through the gorge, following the stream as it curved east. The moonlight broke through the canopy in thin silver threads, guiding her steps. She kept one hand on the rocks and one wrapped around her knife, not because she believed it could stop Rook, but because empty hands felt like surrender. Her vision blurred again. Cold, blood-loss shock. She pushed it away, forcing focus through grit. She had survived worse. Hadn't she? Her mind drifted, unbidden, back to a memory she rarely let surface. A mission in Mali. A convoy ambush. A female corporal bleeding out beside her, whispering apologies for slowing them down. Alexandra had held her hand until her pulse faded. Afterward, she had locked the memory away with all the others. But tonight, it seeped back through the cracks, a reminder of why she kept moving, why she refused to die on a nameless mountain at the hands of men who didn't understand her worth, men who believed silence made her weak. She wasn't silent. She was calculating. Water sloshed around her boots as she reached a bend in the gorge that opened into a small clearing carved by centuries of erosion. Smooth stones, thick moss, a fallen tree lying across the stream like a bridge. The air was colder here. Her breath fogged in front of her. She leaned against the fallen tree, letting the rough bark scratch her palms. She closed her eyes just for a moment, just long enough to steady the shake in her legs. And then, a faint rhythmic sound. Not footsteps. Rotor blades. Her eyes snapped open. A helicopter. Low, fast, cutting across the mountain air with a precision she recognized instantly. Hayes. He was close. Hope surged through her chest, sharp enough to hurt, warm enough to hold her upright. She stumbled toward a patch of higher ground, trying to spot lights through the trees. But her vision flickered. Black spots formed at the edges. Her knees buckled. She caught herself with a hand against the moss-covered rock, her body trembling violently. "Come on," she whispered, voice cracking. "Not now." She clawed her way up the slope, boots slipping on mud, ribs grinding with every breath. The helicopter grew louder, its lights occasionally flashing through the canopy. "Hayes," she rasped, I'm here." But her whisper vanished in the wind. She reached the top of the slope, barely, and found herself on a narrow ridge overlooking a deep ravine. The helicopter lights cut through the darkness below, sweeping the terrain. She raised her arm, tried to wave. Her vision blurred again. The lights moved away. No. She stumbled forward too fast, her foot catching on a root. She pitched forward, slamming onto her hands and knees. Pain tore through her body. She gasped, fighting tears that had nothing to do with weakness and everything to do with the helplessness of being so close. Then so far. She pressed her forehead to the cold earth, shaking, breath ragged. A small sound escaped her, bitterness, exhaustion, grief all tangled together. "Please," she whispered, not to the mountain, not to Hayes, but to herself. "Don't quit on me." The helicopter sound faded into distance. Her hope dimmed again. Silence pressed in around her, thick and heavy. Then, a crunch of gravel behind her. Her blood froze. She turned her head slowly. A silhouette stood at the edge of the trees, unmoving. Tall, still, shadowed. Rook. He didn't aim his weapon. He didn't rush her. He simply watched. She forced herself upright, fighting dizziness, fighting the cold, fighting the weight pressing down on her bones. "Come to finish it," she murmured. He stepped closer, not threatening, almost patient. "You're slowing down." She wiped blood from her cheek with shaking fingers. "You'd be surprised how fast I can get." He tilted his head. "You're freezing, your ribs are cracked, you're losing blood, you haven't eaten since morning, you're barely upright." His voice wasn't mockery. It was clinical. "You won't survive another hour out here," he said quietly. She laughed once, dry, humorless. "You going to offer me a blanket?" Something flickered in his eyes. Not anger. Something closer to disappointment. "You're making this harder than it needs to be, Lieutenant." She steadied herself against a tree trunk. "Then stop hunting me." He stepped closer, moonlight catching the scar near his jaw. "I can't." She swallowed, throat dry. "Orders." He held her gaze for a long moment. "No." Her chest tightened, not from fear. From understanding. He wasn't doing this because someone commanded it. He was doing this because he believed he had to. Because he had rationalized it. Because maybe he respected her too much to pretend otherwise. He scanned her from head to toe, not with cruelty, but with a cold kind of appraisal. "You should have died on that cliff," he said quietly. "Most would have." She didn't drop her stare. "You climbed because you refused the outcome." Her breath trembled. "Surviving isn't stubbornness, it's instinct." He shook his head. "No, it's something else, something they're afraid of." She stiffened. "Who?" He didn't answer. Instead, he took one step closer, the closest he had ever allowed himself to get. "If you keep going," he said softly, "you'll force my hand." She didn't blink. "Do it." A muscle twitched in his jaw. "You don't understand what's in that crate." "Then tell me." He looked away. That was her answer. Fear. He wasn't afraid of her. He was afraid of the truth. "Why protect them?" she whispered. He didn't respond. The silence became its own confession. He lifted his weapon but didn't aim it. "Go with dignity, Lieutenant." She exhaled slowly, tasting metal, tasting defiance. "You think I came this far to die quiet?" Something broke in his expression. Barely a fracture, but enough to show there was still a man somewhere beneath the operator. He sighed once. "Then run." Her breath hitched. "What?" "I won't shoot you in the back." She stared at him. Not understanding. Not believing. Until she saw it. The faintest glimmer of conflict in his eyes. Maybe even mercy. But it didn't matter. What mattered was the choice. He gave her one. And she took it. She turned and ran into the trees. Every stride agony, every breath a gamble, every step a refusal. Rook didn't follow. Not yet. But he would. Behind her, the wind shifted. Far in the distance, the helicopter swung back. Hayes was still searching. And the crate, whatever it held, was still moving across the mountain with the Blackhawk team. She wasn't running from death anymore. She was running toward the truth. And she knew one thing with absolute certainty. She would reach it before Rook reached her. Or she would die trying. How much farther could she push her body before something finally gave out? Alexandra forced her legs to keep moving through the dense tree line, though each stride felt like it was carved from the last scraps of wool she hadn't burned yet. The cold bit through her soaked clothes. Her breath rasped in her throat. Her ribs were a cage of knives. The blood drying on her face cracked with every expression. But stopping meant dying. And dying meant letting them win. And letting them win meant something far worse than her death. Somewhere behind her, Rook moved through the forest with the patience of a predator. Not rushing, not stumbling. He hunted like someone who believed the mountain belonged to him. But tonight it belonged to her. She broke through the trees into a small clearing where moonlight spilled freely across the terrain. A shallow slope descended toward a wider trail, one the contractors would eventually have to follow to reach their extraction point. She paused, steadying herself against a boulder, her breath fogging in the cold. Not far now. Not much time left. But the crate couldn't be far. She hadn't forgotten the way Frost looked at it, the way Cooper guarded it, the way Rook refused to speak about it. Something inside that metal box was worth murder, deception, and the risk of a military investigation. Something that terrified men who otherwise feared nothing. She felt the familiar thread of dread coil in her gut. What if they were moving a weapon? What if they were moving information? What if they were moving someone? Her hand curled into a fist. No, she wouldn't think that. Not yet. A faint beep reached her ears, electronic, clipped, rhythmic. Not Rook's gear. Not a drone. Her heart leapt painfully. Hayes' beacon. She reached into her vest, fingers trembling, and pressed the old tech SATCOM again. One buzz. A pause. Two more buzzes. This time the response came instantly, stronger, close, unmistakable. Lexi, hold your position. Her breath caught Hayes. Static crackled, his voice cut in and out. Closing in 10 minutes, hold. 10 minutes. She didn't have 10 minutes. Rook was already closing the distance. She shut her eyes briefly, letting the wave of relief and fear clash inside her. She wanted to believe Hayes could reach her in time. She wanted to believe she could stay alive for another 10 minutes. But she didn't trust the mountain. She didn't trust her body. And she damn sure didn't trust Rook. Her knees buckled, and she caught herself with a hand against the rock. She inhaled sharply as pain ripped through her side. Her body wasn't just slowing. It was shutting down. And she knew it. She pushed off the boulder and limped toward the slope, her boots scraping against loose gravel. She followed the trail downward, moving through patches of moonlight and shadow. A branch snapped behind her. Not loud. Not close. But unmistakable. She didn't turn. She didn't breathe. She simply kept walking, knowing he was there, knowing he was watching, knowing he was waiting for the moment she dropped. Her mind flashed back to Bud S. again. Not the pain, not the cold, but the instructor leaning down on Hell Week Day 3, whispering a truth she had never forgotten. When you break, Morgan, break forward. She didn't know why that moment surfaced now, but she carried it like fire. She reached the bottom of the slope and slipped into another cluster of trees. The air grew warmer, sheltered from wind. The terrain leveled into a narrow valley, and there, in the middle of the valley floor, half covered by dead branches and camo netting. She saw it. The crate. Unattended. Unwatched. Unprotected. Her heart thudded hard enough to shake her vision. Why would they leave it alone? Then she saw the glow, soft, pulsing blue, seeping through a crack in the corner of the crate. Not a battery. Not a beacon. Not a timer. Something alive. Her breath faltered. She stumbled forward, her boots dragging through soft dirt. She crouched beside the crate, her fingers hovering over the metal. The glow pulsed again, almost like a heartbeat. "What are you?" she whispered. No answer came. Just a hum. Low. Steady. Wrong. She touched the metal. Heat radiated through her fingertips, not dangerous but unnatural. She swallowed hard, forcing her mind to piece everything together. The secrecy. The kill order. The fear. The silence. The roster switch. What if this wasn't a weapon? What if it wasn't military tech? What if it was something else entirely? Her breath grew shallow. She dug her fingers under the lid, trying to pry it open. Pain shot up her arm, but she pushed through it. The metal creaked. The glow brightened. Her heartbeat pounded. "Come on, come on." A voice whispered behind her. "Don't." Her whole body froze. Rook stood 10 paces away, muzzle pointed down, not at her. At the crate. She rose slowly, turning to face him. What's inside? He didn't answer. His face wasn't cold now. It was grim. Step back, Lieutenant. She didn't move. I need to know what they're moving. You don't trust me. Her voice cracked. I'm past trust. For the first time since she met him, she saw something break across his expression, fear. Not of her. Not of the mission. Of the crate. He stepped forward slowly, every movement careful, deliberate. If you open it, you won't survive long enough for Hayes to reach you. Her stomach twisted. What's in it, Rook? He lifted his eyes to hers, haunted. Something no one is supposed to see. She shook her head. You killed for this. I prevented something worse. What could possibly be worse than murder? He hesitated. And in the silence she heard it. A soft hiss. Then a whisper. Her blood turned to ice. It wasn't coming from Rook. It was coming from the crate. She stumbled back, heart hammering, knife raised without even realizing she'd drawn it. A vibration shuddered through the metal, faint but unmistakable. Rook, she breathed, tell me what's inside. His jaw tightened. A prototype. A prototype of what? A biological intelligence. She didn't understand, not fully, but the truth didn't care. He continued, voice low. It was built off the Molly strain. Her heart lurched. The outbreak. He nodded once. They tried to weaponize adaptability. Her knees weakened. No. No. That mission had haunted her for years. She had seen what that virus could do to an entire village in under 24 hours. Mutations, rapid neural compromise, unpredictable behavior. What kind of adaptability? She whispered. Rook looked at the crate, eyes hollow. It learns its host. A chill swept her bones. And it copies it. The ground shifted beneath her feet. The air thickened. Her vision blurred, not from pain. From understanding. This thing, she rasped, it can mimic humans. Not perfectly, not yet, he swallowed. But the research, the samples, whatever's in that crate. The crate hissed again. Louder this time. Closer. Rook raised his weapon, aiming at the lid. Don't, she shouted. It's waking up, he snapped. She stepped between him and the crate, breath trembling. Shooting will trigger it, you know that. Then get out of the way. No. He stared at her, like he was seeing her for the first time. Then, the lid shifted. A shadow flickered inside. Her breath stopped. Rook's voice dropped to a whisper. Lieutenant, run. The lid cracked open another inch. A single pale hand, human but wrong, slid into view. And Alexandra realized something that hollowed her more than pain ever could. The shape inside the crate was not a weapon. It was a person. Or something pretending to be one. Before she could move, the mountain shook with the echo of a helicopter approaching low, haze returning through the valley, blades tearing through the treetops. Rook lifted his weapon. The creature lifted its head. And Alexandra lifted her breath in a silent, desperate prayer. She wasn't ready. But ready didn't match her. The truth had finally opened its eyes. Why did the face inside the crate look almost human? Alexandra's breath caught in her throat as the pale hand pushed further into the moonlight, fingers too delicate, joints too smooth, skin almost translucent. She stumbled backward, her body reacting faster than her mind could process the horror rising from that metal box. The head lifted next. Slowly. Jerky. As if remembering how muscles should work. But the shape beneath the skin wasn't right. Shadows moved where bones should have been solid. The eyes opened last wide, glassy, unfocused, and fixed on her with an eerie stillness that made her lungs seize. It didn't blink. It didn't breathe. It just looked. Rook's voice snapped the moment apart. "Lieutenant, move." He tackled her sideways just as the creature lurched upward, hitting the lid with a strength that bent steel. The crate screeched, metal twisting under the pressure. Alexandra hit the ground hard, pain ripping through her ribs. She forced herself upright, knife in hand, her breath a stuttering gasp. Rook pointed his weapon at the crate, but his hands shook. That terrified her more than the creature did. The helicopter roared overhead, blades slicing the air like a warning. Its searchlight cut through the treetops, sweeping across the valley, illuminating the clearing in harsh white flashes. The creature reacted instantly. It recoiled from the light, curling like something afraid or enraged. Alexandra swallowed hard, trying to steady her shaking hands. "Rook, what is that?" He didn't look away from the crate, a neural adaptive clone. Her mind stalled. "That's impossible." "Not anymore." The creature shifted, arms unfolding like a newborn testing its limbs. Its fingers trembled, then stilled, then moved with a chilling precision, copying the exact way Alexandra held her knife. Her stomach dropped. "It's mirroring you," Rook whispered. "No," she breathed, "it's learning me." The helicopter banked lower, its spotlight locking onto the clearing. The creature hissed, not an animal sound but a distortion, like air being forced through a throat that wasn't fully formed. Then it moved. Fast. Too fast. Alexandra barely dodged the swipe aimed at her face. The creature's fingers sliced the air where she'd been standing a heartbeat earlier. Rook fired, but the creature jerked sideways, the round missing by inches. "That thing isn't supposed to be awake yet," Rook shouted. Alexandra stumbled behind a fallen log, chest heaving. "You said it learns its host." "Yes." "Then who's its host?" Rook didn't answer, because the answer was obvious. "Her." She felt the realization like ice pouring down her spine. The creature in the crate had been adapting to her from the moment she arrived on the mountain, watching her, studying her, maybe even copying her biology through exposure, through environment. And now it wanted what all adaptive organisms wanted. A complete template. It wanted her. The creature stalked across the clearing on unsteady legs, each movement smoother than the last. It paused, cocking its head, mimicking her exact posture from seconds earlier. Alexandra's stomach twisted. "Rook," she murmured, "if it completes the copying process, it becomes indistinguishable from me, and then it becomes uncontrollable." She pressed a trembling hand to her ribs. Sweat dripped down her face. Her knees shook. It wasn't just mirroring her stance. It was mirroring her injuries. Blood began to seep from a cut forming along its side, same place as her wound. She felt sick. The helicopter descended even lower. A voice boomed through the loudspeaker. "LEXI, hold position." "Hayes." He was close enough to see. Close enough to fire. Close enough to save her. But the creature whirled toward the sky, its pupils constricting at the sound. It screeched, a horrible fractured sound, and the helicopter jolted. "What's it doing?" Alexandra whispered. Rook exhaled sharply, adapting to threats. No way it can reach a helo." The creature crouched and jumped. Not high enough to reach the helicopter, but high enough to throw a rock at 50 miles an hour straight into the rotor. The rock missed by inches. The helicopter banked hard to the left, blades slicing the air dangerously. Hayes' voice roared through the speaker. "What the hell is that?" Rook's voice cracked. "Don't let it lock onto you. It'll learn your flight pattern." Alexandra forced herself upright, adrenaline fighting her pain. "We need to distract it." Rook, jaw clenched. "We need to kill it." The creature dropped back to the ground, eyes shifting between her, Rook, and the helicopter. Learning, calculating, choosing. She felt it before she saw it. It chose her. It lunged. She ducked, rolling painfully across the ground, knife raised. The creature slashed downward, the blow slicing deep into the dirt. It spun with unnatural speed, its movements blurring between mimicry and something alien. Rook tackled it from the side, wrestling it toward the ground. But the creature moved with a strength far beyond its size, twisting its body with serpentine fluidity. "Run!" Rook shouted, struggling to pin it. She didn't. She couldn't leave him. Not like this. She grabbed a fallen branch, thick, heavy, and swung with all the strength she had left. The branch cracked against the creature's skull, jerking its head sideways. It didn't bleed, but it faltered. Just long enough. Rook shoved it backward, both of them tumbling down the slope in a violent tumble of limbs and dirt. Alexandra staggered after them, every breath agony, knife clutched tight. The creature landed with a sickening thud, but rose again, shaking off the impact like a dog shaking off water. Its eyes fixed on her. Not Rook. Not the helicopter. "Sorry." Hayes' voice called out again, closer now, angrier, terrified. "Alexei, get to cover." She couldn't. If she turned her back, the creature would strike. She felt it, she knew it. She backed up slowly, her boots sinking into the soft earth. The creature mirrored her pace exactly. Rook reached for his weapon on the ground, but the creature kicked it away with a perfect copy of Alexandra's own footwork from earlier. Her heart hammered. Rook's eyes widened. "Lexi, it's binding to your neural signature." She swallowed hard, meaning it won't stop until it finishes the copy. "And then what?" she whispered. He didn't say it. He didn't need to. It would replace her. Hayes' helicopter broke through the tree line, spotlight locking onto the creature. The wind from the rotors whipped through the clearing, blowing Alexandra's hair across her face. The creature screamed in sensory overload. Hayes yelled into the speaker, "Down on the ground, now." The creature lunged toward the helicopter too fast. Alexandra did the only thing she could. She stepped into its path. Her voice cracked like the mountain itself breaking open. "Hey!" The creature turned toward her instantly, locked to her, obsessed with her. She threw her knife at its feet, forcing it to hesitate, forcing it to assess, forcing it to choose her again. Hayes took the shot. A single suppressed round fired from above. The creature flinched, but didn't fall. It turned its face toward Hayes, hello, and smiled. Hayes cursed, "What the?" Rook screamed, "Alexei, don't let it touch you." But she already knew. One touch. One point of contact. One moment of connection. And she wouldn't be Alexandra Morgan anymore. She'd be gone. She backed up, breath shaking, body trembling. The creature stepped toward her. Slow. Intentional. Inevitable. And as it crossed into the moonlight, its skin began to shift, subtle at first. Then clearer. Then horrifying. It was becoming her. Same jawline. Same cheekbones. Same broken rib. Same limp. Same cuts on her palms. It opened its mouth, and in a warped echo of her own voice it whispered, "Lieutenant Morgan." She staggered back, heart pounding against her cracked ribs. The mountain went silent. The wind stopped. Even Hayes stopped shouting. The creature took another step. And Alexandra realized the truth she had been running from all night. This wasn't about killing her. This was about replacing her. And she had one breath. One heartbeat. One impossible choice left. What would she become if she ran? Alexandra felt the question tear through her chest as the creature stepped closer, its face now a warped mirror of hers, its movements disturbingly synchronized with her breathing, her stance, her pain. It wasn't just imitating her. It was becoming her. Her pulse thundered against her ribs. She backed up one step. The creature backed up one step. She steadied her breath. The creature steadied its breath. Moonlight hit its cheek, turning pale synthetic skin into something almost human. Almost. It tilted its head with a softness that chilled her blood. An echo of confusion she remembered wearing herself once, long ago, at a briefing where she'd felt out of place. It was copying her memories, too. "How?" she whispered. The creature blinked, once, slow, then the answer formed behind its eyes in a way that felt far too knowing. It wasn't speaking with her voice anymore. It was speaking with her thoughts. Rook crawled toward his weapon, breath ragged, ribs bruised from the fall. "Lexi, don't let it inside your head." Hayes' voice boomed through the helicopter speaker. "Morgan, move to the open now." But neither their warnings nor their fear mattered in the moment. She stood face to face with the thing trying to erase her existence. She realized something terrible and precise. If she moved wrong, if she fought wrong, if she let it touch her, it would finish the copying process. And then it wouldn't need her anymore. Her throat tightened, her palms slicked with sweat. Rook inched toward the creature. "Lexi, don't run." She didn't. She lifted her chin, forcing strength into a body scraped empty of it. "If you understand me, stop." For a moment, barely a flicker, the creature hesitated. It heard her. It understood her. And then something inside its spine tightened, as if an invisible command overrode instinct. It lunged. She threw herself sideways, rolling painfully across the dirt as its hand slammed into the space where she'd stood, cracking the ground like it had struck stone instead of soil. She coughed, pushing onto her knees, forcing her body upright again. Rook fired 2 rounds. One struck the creature's leg, but it didn't stumble, didn't react. It simply recalculated and turned its eyes on him. "Stay behind me," Alexandra shouted. But Rook didn't stay. "It completes you, and the world loses the real one." His voice trembled, not with fear of death, but fear of losing the version of her that had survived the fall, the gorge, the hunt, the night. The creature charged toward him. Alexandra moved before she could think. Her legs burned, her ribs screamed, her vision narrowed to a tunnel of moonlight and adrenaline. She slammed into the creature's side, knocking it off course. Both of them hit the ground, rolling violently down the shallow embankment. Her palm struck something sharp, blood spilled. The creature's palm sprouted the same wound seconds later, blood bubbling from identical skin. It wasn't copying her injuries anymore. It was copying her in real time. It pinned her arm to the earth with inhuman strength. Its face hovered inches from hers, eyes wide, pupils dilating to match hers, breath sinking with her frantic inhale, her panicked exhale. It whispered, not in her voice, in her mind. Integration. Her entire body seized in terror. Rook dove down the slope toward them, shouting her name. Hayes' helicopter swooped low, spotlight blazing across the forest as rotor wash ripped through the clearing. But Alexandra felt none of it. All she felt were the creature's fingertips trembling toward her temple. She did the only thing she had strength left to do. She closed her eyes. She forced stillness into her beaten body. Not surrender. Control. She slowed her breathing, long, steady, deliberate inhales. Pain became muted. Fear became cold. She dropped her heart rate, focusing on a single memory that had kept her alive more times than she could count. Her father's voice. "Control the moment, Lexi, or the moment controls you." Her body shifted into a calm the creature didn't expect. Its movements faltered, hesitated, It didn't know how to copy calm. Only chaos. Only instinct. Only fear. She whispered, barely audible, "You want me, then take the part you don't know." The creature leaned in, confused, its forehead almost touching hers. And that was her chance. She ripped her hand free, grabbed her blood-soaked palmful of pine needles, collected from the embankment during the fall, and shoved them into the creature's eyes. It recoiled, screeching. Hayes saw the opening. One shot cracked the night. The round struck the creature in the skull, but instead of killing it, the bullet passed through a gelatinous membrane that rippled like water. Rook shouted, "It's adapting Geo-4 the core." Alexandra rolled toward the creature's chest, grabbing the jagged metal piece that had torn from the crate earlier. She drove it straight into the center of its sternum with every ounce of strength left in her trembling arms. The creature convulsed. Its face flickered. Her face. Rook's face. Her father's face. No face at all. Then it screamed, a sound that shook her to her bones, vibrating through the clearing like a wounded world. Its body spasmed once, twice, and collapsed. Still, Alexandra collapsed beside it, chest heaving, lungs burning, eyes stinging with tears she didn't remember allowing. Rook crawled to her side, breath tearing through his throat. "You good?" She laughed, once broken, exhausted. "Define good." Hayes' helicopter touched down hard, boots pounding the earth. He ran toward her, face pale, eyes wide with a fear she'd never seen in him. "Lexi," his voice cracked as he dropped to one knee beside her. "Your signal went dead. You weren't moving, I thought." She leaned her head against the dirt. "You're late." He barked a shaky laugh, pulling her into a careful, fragile embrace she didn't have the strength to return. But her tears fell anyway. Not from weakness. From surviving. Rook stood, staring at the creature's broken form. "This can't leave the mountain," he said quietly. Hayes looked up. "The hell it won't. This is going straight to DARPA." Rook shook his head. "It'll escape protocol. It'll be replicated. It'll be used." Hayes squared up. "This is above your clearance." Alexandra forced herself upright, leaning heavily against Hayes. "He's right." Hayes blinked. "Lexi." "You saw what it did," she rasped. "What it could become, what it would replace." Silence settled over the clearing. Cold. Deep. True. Hayes exhaled slowly. "What do you want, Lieutenant?" Her eyes drifted to the creature, still pale, almost peaceful now. She whispered, "Burn it." Hayes stared at her. Then at Rook. Then at the moonlit valley. He nodded once. Rook fetched accelerant from the crate's storage panel. Hayes ignited it. Alexandra watched the flames climb the creature's body, watched the shadows dance across its almost human face, watched the wrongness of it fade into ash. She felt no triumph. No celebration. Just a quiet ache. When the fire died, Hayes helped her toward the helicopter. Rook stayed behind, watching the embers. Before she climbed aboard, Alexandra looked back at him. "You didn't have to spare me." He met her eyes, unreadable. "I didn't spare you, I respected you." She held his gaze, battered, bruised, unbroken. "Then don't hunt me again." He gave a faint, sad smile. "I hope they never make me." The helicopter lifted her into the cold night sky. As mountains fell away beneath her, she pressed her forehead against the window, letting the hum of the rotors drown the sound of her heartbeat. Hayes placed a hand on her shoulder. "Proud of you, Lex." She didn't answer. She didn't need to. Some victories didn't feel like victories. They felt like survival. As the helicopter carried her away from the burning valley, she closed her eyes and whispered the truth she had earned with blood, pain, and impossible courage. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts. And on that mountain, against all odds, so did she.